Good afternoon, everyone. As our members gather and our special guests gather, I want to acknowledge some of the participating groups who are here. Every Town, Moms Demand Action, March for Our Lives, American Federation of Teachers, Brady Campaign, Center for American Progress, Doctors for America, Giffords, National Education Association, Network, Newtown Action Alliance, Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, Sandy Hook Promise, and I know some people from Trinity College, my alma mater, are here as well. Trinity College, there we go. So here we are. Democrats from both sides of the Capitol are here today to accelerate a drumbeat to end the gun violence epidemic in America. We welcome back to the House side Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who will be joining us momentarily, and Senator Richard Blumenthal, and our former member as well, Senator Chris Murphy. Thank you to our leaders in the House, Chairman Mike Thompson, Chairman of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, Chairman Jerry Nadler of the Judiciary Committee, Representative Robin Kelly, a champion on this issue, and Representative Lucy McBath. Our thanks to our VIPs, our very special guests, Judy and Wayne Richardson. We thank them for sharing their story, and Tatiana Washington, March for Our Lives, for their courage to turn agony into action and with the strength to tell their stories. 1 year ago today, the House passed H.R. 8, a common sense bipartisan background check legislation. And then we passed H.R. 1112, closing the Charleston loophole that enabled the hate crime at Mother Emanuel AME. But for 365 days, Senator McConnell has let those bills gather dust on his desk over in the Senate. Every single day that he does not act, 100 Americans die from gun violence, and 47 children and teens are shot or killed by gun violence. Senator McConnell, we have a question for you. Why do you think your political survival is more important than the survival of our children? Give us a vote. Give us a vote. As acknowledged, former member of the House, leader in the Democratic leader in the Senate, Chuck Schumer.
Thank you. And author of the Brady Law in the House and the assault weapons ban. So first, let me thank our great speaker for the amazing job she does all the time, in every way. And I finished my job here today. Anyway, and my great colleagues in the House who have done so much good work on so many different things to make America a better place, to help people in the middle class stay in the middle class, to help people aspiring to get to the middle class to get there, and to make us safer. Make us safer. Save our lives. Just yesterday, once again, you read the newspaper and you see the headline, "Gunman opens fire, killing 5." That was in Milwaukee, but it could have occurred in any city, in any state, in terms of a mass shooting, and every day, guns kill our people, our young people on our streets, every single day. As a country, we are tired of this. We've endured so many of these tragedies over and over and over. Any week, any year, any day, there's somewhere in America where a community is observing the anniversary of a mass shooting. Every hour, there's a family mourning a loved one who was needlessly lost to gun violence. President Trump said yesterday that his heart is breaking for the victims and the families. Enough words, President Trump. How about a little action? We don't believe your words. We don't believe your words, President Trump. After El Paso, and Dayton, President Trump and Leader McConnell once again said the same thing. And I remember then they promised that background checks would be front and center. You know how much action McConnell has given us in the Senate on background checks? Zero. Put them up. Zero, everybody. Zero. Come on. You know how to do this. Come on, Jerry. So, we're just tired of all this, plain and simple. Leader McConnell is too busy taking his cue from the NRA to do something about it. You know who the best gun lobbyist is in Washington, D.C.? Mitch McConnell. When the NRA says cower, Republicans cower. When the NRA says stand down, Republicans stand down. When the NRA says kill the bill, guess what? Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans bury it in their legislative graveyard. But as Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. I have a dream that in January, McConnell will no longer be in a position to bury gun legislation. I have a dream that we will pass H.R. 8 and many more of the 200 bills that these great representatives have passed. Thank you for letting me speak.
I'm Mike Thompson. I'm a gun owner. I'm a Vietnam combat veteran, and I'm the chair of the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. That task force was put together by Speaker Pelosi after the tragedy at Sandy Hook, where 20 kids and 6 educators were killed. For 6.5 years, we tried to pass legislation to expand background checks. In that Republican-controlled House, we did not have one hearing, we did not have one vote. But in the 116th Congress, under the leadership of Speaker Pelosi, we passed H.R. 8 to expand background checks. It was a bipartisan bill with a bipartisan vote. And thanks to Speaker Pelosi and to our Democratic majority and to Chairman Nadler of the Judiciary Committee, we were able to pass that bill. That was 365 days ago. Now, 365 days later, millions of lives have been changed and hundreds of communities have been rocked across our country. We've had 417 mass shootings in the last 365 days. That's more mass shootings than there are days in the year. And as you heard, every day, 30 people are killed by someone using a gun, and if you factor in accidental deaths and suicides, it's 100 people a day. We can do something about it. We wrote the bill. We passed the bill. And there's one person standing in the way. One person standing between safer communities, safer schools, and a safer United States of America. That's Senator Mitch McConnell. Senator McConnell is preventing us from helping make our country and our communities safer. Well, Senator McConnell, we're not going away. We're not going away. We're going to work shoulder to shoulder with the American people. Remember, 93% of the American people believe we should expand background checks. You're going to hear from us, and you're going to hear from people across this country until this bill is brought up for a hearing, until this bill is brought up for a vote, and until this bill passes and becomes law.
We have had so many great leaders in the Senate on this issue, but there are no two greater leaders on this issue than the two great senators from Connecticut. We're going to now hear from Senator Murphy and then from Senator Blumenthal.
Well, thank you, Senator Schumer. I want to thank Speaker Pelosi and her colleagues behind us for making this a priority, for making sure that in the first 2 months of this new majority in the House, that we proclaimed to the public that we are on their side. The reason that this bill was a priority is because it's a priority for families in this country, because it's a priority for kids in this country, because it's a priority for parents in this country. The number is 100 per day, but unfortunately, many of the people behind us can tell you that that number is inaccurate, because that is only the number of people whose lives are ended every day. There are hundreds more who are shot and who sustain injuries that never, ever go away. For every life that's lost, there are dozens of family members and friends whose lives are altered in fundamental ways that never, ever change. And so the scope of this epidemic is so much bigger than the numbers that we use, and it's why it commands us to action. We can make that case on policy grounds as to why H.R. 8 has to become law, why it will save thousands and thousands of lives. But if Republicans aren't interested in saving other people's lives, then maybe they should be interested in saving their own political lives. Because we are building a movement, and it is coming to get every single Republican who votes against universal background checks. And so you are either with 90% of the American public, or you are with the NRA. And if you are with the NRA, your time here in Washington is short. It is coming to an end. And so there's a choice to be made for Mitch McConnell. Either he's going to continue to allow the NRA to be in charge of the United States Senate, or he is going to be the minority leader very soon. And he, yeah, right? And so we will continue to stand with our colleagues in the House, to stand with this growing movement all across the country, and make clear that 90% of the American public have to be right. The NRA cannot control the business of the United States Senate. The movement is getting bigger and bigger. It is a matter not of if we pass universal background checks, but when matters. 100 lives a day, thousands of others altered. We are not going to stop until H.R. 8 becomes law.
Well, first of all, my thanks also to Nancy Pelosi. My thanks to our House colleagues who have been just such great leaders, and to Senator Schumer, whose career is about stopping gun violence. But most important, I want to thank the survivors who are here and who every day live through this pain and relive it when they come here to advocate for common sense gun violence measures. And Senator Murphy's absolutely right. We are building a movement, but the we is the survivors and the grassroots activists and the community organizers who are showing us what America looks like. And President Trump, this is what America looks like, and America demands action. So to Mitch McConnell, who knows politics pretty well, your epitaph as majority leader will be the Grim Reaper, unless you let us act on gun violence. He proudly calls himself the Grim Reaper. He presides over that legislative graveyard, and enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And we want to say to America, Milwaukee are only the tip of the iceberg, because the pain and the trauma that afflicts the young people who watch in their neighborhoods, the drive-by shootings, the family members who lose loved ones, the emotional shock of every one of these shootings, even if there's no fatality, tears at the fabric of America. And I just want to say, as long as I'm in this place and as long as I'm here, I'm going to continue this fight. A lot has changed since the mid-1990s, when we first passed an assault weapon ban, and I defended our state assault weapon ban as Attorney General in court. What we have now is a movement. It is a real movement that will haunt our Republican colleagues just as history will haunt them. Courage is contagious. Stand up, be counted, be on the right side of history. Thank you.
I'm Robin Kelly, and I represent the 2nd Congressional District of Illinois. As my colleagues have said, I'm here, we're all here, because this bipartisan, we didn't say that part, but bipartisan common sense legislation is about saving lives. Nothing more and nothing less. We are here today because Americans are dying. 39,741 died by guns in 2018, and more die every day because Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans lack the spine to stand up to the NRA. I am proud to represent the Chicagoland area, but like all great cities, we have our share of challenges, and gun violence is a big one. Pulling up my colleague. We've done the hard work at home. Illinois and Chicago have strong gun safety laws, but we are surrounded by states with weak or non-existent gun laws that fuel violence in our city. In fact, more than half of our crime guns come from outside the city. That's why we need universal background check legislation to stop Indiana's and Wisconsin, you hear me? Indiana and Wisconsin's guns from killing kids in Chicago. And not necessarily mass shootings, but night after night, one by one. And we also need a federal anti-trafficking statute to bring federal resources to the table. It's been 1 year since the House did our job. Is Senator McConnell's turn, or does he not care about the 232 Kentuckians, his constituents, who have been killed by guns since the House took action? Thank you.
The answer, obviously, is that Senator McConnell doesn't care. We have had, in this country, about 40,000 people killed by guns every single year. In other countries, 22, 35, 102, and the Republicans and the NRA say, well, it's a mental health problem. What a slander on the American people. American people are not 10,000 times as mentally ill as everyone else. Just an excuse to blame instead of dealing with the guns. We have known for a long time what we have to do. We did it in '94 and was repealed as soon as the Republicans took power a few years later with the assault weapons ban. We have to do it again. We have to go further. And the Democrats will. And as soon as we took over the House, it took us in our committee 3 weeks to draft a bill that we're celebrating today, to draft the 2 bills we're celebrating today. It took the House another 3 weeks, and we passed them a year ago today. It has taken the Republicans until now to do nothing. And they will continue to do nothing because they will not learn the lesson. And they've shown that for the last 20 years. So it's up to all of us to stop the murder and the mayhem by supporting this legislation and by voting out the people who will not allow it to get to the floor. The Republicans, Mitch McConnell, just one of them, all of them, but you know what to do because you're here. And I thank all of you for your role thus far, but we will win, and we better win quickly to save lives.
I'm so proud of so many members who are here who have worked so hard on this issue, and I will acknowledge them, but not before we hear from our true VIPs who are here. Wayne and Judy Richardson will come and share their story, again, how they've turned their agony into helping to save other lives. Thank you, Judy. Please
Thank
let
you.
us welcome them.
Thank you. Our beautiful daughter, Darian, was taken from us 10 years ago, almost to the day. On January 8th, 2010, armed intruders burst into her home in Portland, Maine, and opened fire into her bedroom while she was sleeping. One of the bullets struck her left thumb. Another struck her right leg, entering by the knee and lodging in her hip. She spent 3 days in ICU and 3 more weeks in critical care. and the weeks following working through the physical, psychological, and emotional pain that accompanies recovery from severe trauma. After being released from the hospital, she returned to her childhood home with us to continue her painful recovery. Every day, Darian put on her beautiful smile and did her best to move forward. She suffered from PTSD, sleeping with a door open and a light on, and complications from her wounds continued. Tragically, on February 28, 2010, 51 days after she was shot, she died of complications from her gunshot wounds. She was only 25. We miss her so much. Not a day goes by that we don't feel her absence in the world and the empty space where she should be. We miss her infectious zest for life and fun. We miss her voice. We miss her sense of humor and her laugh. We miss her dancing. We missed her dearly at her sister Serena's wedding 2 years ago. And we miss being with her at her wedding as well. We miss her every day. To compound this tragedy, Darian's homicide remains unsolved. The police did recover the gun in her shooting, though sadly it was found at another murder of a young man in Portland 1 month later. The investigation of our daughter's case went cold there. In part, we learned because the handgun that was used in both shootings had been sold at a gun show, private sale, with no background check. No name was recorded, no records were kept. Because of that, we'll likely never know who killed our daughter. We're here today to be her voice, to tell her story on the 1-year anniversary of the House of Representatives passing H.R. 8, a bill to require background checks on all gun sales. Not only would this bill save lives by stopping domestic abusers and convicted felons from purchasing guns, but it also had bipartisan support in the Congress and overwhelming support from the American people. And if it had been a law 10 years ago, then we'd at least have a record of who bought the gun that killed Darian. And maybe we'd have some semblance of justice today. But instead of becoming a law and saving lives, H.R. 8 has sat untouched on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's desk for 365 days. In that time, an estimated 38,000 Americans have been killed by gun violence, twice that many wounded. Horrific shootings like yesterday's in Milwaukee seem to happen every single day. And yet Senator McConnell has refused to even give this bill a vote in the Senate. We do have great leaders. We need only to look at the room. Senator Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Representative Thompson, Senator Murphy, Lucy, I can't name them all, right? You know, they know who they are. We are so grateful for their leadership on gun safety. But Senator McConnell and his colleagues' failure to act is something we can neither forget nor forgive. Fortunately, while Senator McConnell may control the votes in the Senate, he does not control us. And if he and other opponents of this bill won't act, won't keep people like Darian safe, then the deaths of Americans everywhere will be on him. And we'll be watching. Because Darian is gone, and we're forced to live without her. What we cannot live with is allowing this to happen again and again. Thank you.
Oh, my. The courage. We only wish that someone on the other side of the Capitol would have the courage to respond to your plea. Now I'm pleased to call up Tatiana Washington, where she marched for our lives. Tatiana, darling.
Thank you, Speaker Pelosi, Representative Macbeth, Representative Kelly, and all the other members of Congress here today. And all the members of Congress are continuously fighting for gun violence prevention and for inviting March for Our Lives here today. Yesterday, my city of Milwaukee was trending as the 45th mass shooting of the year. I am absolutely heartbroken. My thoughts, prayers, and action are with those directly impacted and with my community as we heal from this tragedy. I'm going to say that number again, 45 mass shootings, and it is only February. In 2017, my Aunt Sherida was shot multiple times by her husband before he turned the gun on himself. And it's been a year since the bipartisan background check bill passed, and yet the Senate has done literally nothing to seriously address this nation's gun violence crisis. Is Senator McConnell really okay with the fact that 40,000 people die each year by guns? Are Senate Republicans really okay that weapons of war are used to kill and injure Americans all across this country? Are we okay with the fact that 97% of Americans are in favor of background checks and the bill is not being brought to a vote? No, we are not okay with that. We want a clean version of background checks enacted. And in the last year, while gun violence prevention bills have been collecting dust on Mitch McConnell's desk, we, the students from March for Our Lives, have been very busy. We released our Peace Plan for a Safer America, filed an amicus brief in a Second Amendment Supreme Court case, held a presidential forum with Giffords and 9 candidates, and hosted our first annual Our Power Summit to train hundreds of young gun violence prevention activists. And lastly, we helped pass dozens of bills at the state level. If young people can do all of that, why can't McConnell take action as well? Thank you to all the champions in the House that got H.R. 8 passed. Now it is time for the Senate to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. This is a working farm, you know. We have votes called on the floor. That's why some of the members walked out. But I do want to acknowledge some who have been here and are still here. Representative Yarmouth, Representative Langevin, Representative, I'll just say Rep. Swazi, Rep. Tonko, Rep. Schakowsky, Rep. Levin, Rep. Escobar, Rep. Christ, Rep. Catherine Clark, Rep. Velasquez, Rep. Boyle, Rep. Scanlon, Rep. Dean, Rep. Swalwell, Rep. Chu, Rep. Castor, Rep. Engel, Rep. Snyder, Rep. Marcus L. Powell, Rep. Panetta, Rep. Jackson Lee. Anyone else that I said your name, Mr. Swazi? Anyone else? And also, just again to acknowledge that we were led and joined by Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. And now to close for us, a member of the House for whom we have so much respect and so much we owe her so much for her generosity of spirit, for her courage, Congresswoman Lucy McBath.
My son Jordan was killed sitting in the back seat of a car at a gas station with his friends. A man pulled up next to them, complained about the loud music that they were playing, and fired 10 shots into the car, killing my only son. I promised that I would take that same sense of protection, that love that a mother has for her son, and I would use it for my community. Use it for my country. That I would dedicate my life for families like mine in Marietta, Georgia, who are terrified that they'll send their children to school one day and they'll never return home. They're terrified that they will be me. They're terrified that they'll be the Richardsons. They're terrified that they will be like the untold names and faces of thousands of people across the country that continue to die unnecessarily by this extremist gun culture. there is injustice in this year of inaction. And I pray that on the anniversary of H.R. 8, we remember that the lives of our children, of our families, of our communities, and the American people are in our hands and are at stake. Thank every one of you for being here today. Thank you for standing up. Thank you to every survivor and every advocate and every one of my colleagues that fights on this Hill every single day to keep us safe. We must stand and we must fight. To not fight means we're conceding to the Republican Party and conceding to this vicious culture of gun violence, which none of us is immune from. Thank you for being here. Thank you for lifting up this scourge of violence. Stand with us. We need you. Continue to fight. Continue to talk about the fact that Mitch McConnell, to this day, will not pay heed to the thousands of voices of families and victims and survivors every single day that are crying out for justice. Stand with us. Fight for justice. Fight for the safety of our future and our children. We have no other choice.
Vote. What more needs to be said, except I do want to acknowledge Congresswoman Jackie Spear standing there with Mike Thompson, both of whom I carry the bullet on my wrist. They carried it in their bodies. So thank you for your courage to take your personal pain to this place. And aren't we blessed to be led by so many of you and the personal experience of Lucy McBath. Let us applaud Lucy.